Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry thrived in their first season together, but are they worth their pricey cost this year, or will their efficiency drop off? We discuss the top 3 biggest storylines for the Baltimore Ravens entering 2025 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we are discussing all things Baltimore Ravens, and we're going to hit on, is Derrick Henry, does he have anything still left in the tank? I mean, a monster season last year, but the wheels have to fall off eventually, right? Is it this year, or do we still have another year or two left in him? Lamar Jackson was the quarterback 1 last season, just absolutely on fire, but super, super efficient. Can he keep that up? And then we need to figure out who's going to be Lamar Jackson's top target this season. Now that they added DeAndre Hopkins, they still have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. Who is the best value in drafts this year? We will get to all of that. Let's start with Lamar Jackson. And should he be the first quarterback off the board? Because right now he's ranked as a quarterback 2, behind only Josh Allen. However, even though he's quarterback 2, he's only going 1 spot behind Lamar Jackson in consensus ranking. So it could flip in any draft that you're in. So right now, Josh Allen's going 24th overall in consensus ranks, and then Lamar Jackson's going 25th. So you are taking either of these guys over some really good players like Kyron Williams or Bucky Irving or Chase Brown, Jackson Smith-Njigba. You have to choose if they're worth it. Lamar Jackson was the quarterback 1 overall and in points per game last year, and it was by a lot. He averaged 25.3 points per game last season. Josh Allen was the quarterback 2 at 22.3 points, so 3 more points per game for Lamar. But can he keep his efficiency? Because his touchdowns at 41 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, the rushing yards will always be there, but also his passing yards per attempt were insanely high too. What do you think about Lamar Jackson this upcoming year? Is he worth that draft cost?
When I look at it, Lamar Jackson is special. And if you take him there, I'm not going to criticize you because you look at the numbers, you look at what he's done in the Todd Monken offense the last couple seasons. He's really taken a liking. We thought it was pretty good with Greg Roman. He won an MVP. In that offense, he really should have won MVP in back-to-back years with his numbers with Monken. I mean, incredible season in terms of putting up 40 touchdown passes and also being elite running quarterback. I mean, we don't see that very often. I think Josh Allen won a little bit more because there was some buzz with the Bills and how he put them on their back a little bit, even though the statistics didn't show it. But statistically, for fantasy purposes, Lamar Jackson was clearly the better overall quarterback, and we're not surprised at this. He has that ability. We know it because he's a cheat code quarterback that now is settling in as a very good passing quarterback. Now, when we look, however, at his history, this is the first time that he has ascended to this high. And if you look at the last 4 seasons, he was quarterback 7 in back-to-back seasons. That's before Todd Monken arrived. And then he went QB4, and then QB1 there. But when you look at Josh Allen the past few seasons, QB1, QB3, QB1, QB2. So he doesn't have much deviation, and the scoring also is pretty consistent, right, overall. And in past years, I know Lamar had the edge on him by about 3 points per game this year, but there's been cases where it's flipped, and Josh Allen has the edge about 3 points per game. Now, everyone's questioning, okay, who's going to sustain their part of the production? We know Josh Allen's going to run a lot, and that is going to be there, and they're going to get him going in the red zone, and he's going to score the rushing touchdowns. So that is definitely true. Now, the variable that we look at with Lamar Jackson is his touchdowns. Josh Allen could actually spike his passing touchdowns a little bit more, even from his MVP season. I mean, it was still a lot of room for growth there. History also tells us if you have a 40-yard or 40 touchdown season, as a quarterback, you're not likely to duplicate it. It's just hard to do from one season to the next because, again, you need all these variables to come into place. You need a high touchdown scoring rate, and as Michelle mentioned, a very ridiculous rate of efficiency to pull that off. Lamar Jackson could have a very big year and not produce the same number of touchdowns through the air, and that would not surprise anybody because the natural regression is there. And the other thing is, I think when you look at Derrick Henry versus a James Cook, they're more likely to just pound it in with Derrick Henry there in Baltimore than like try to run Lamar because he's not the same build as Josh Allen. So when you look at the touchdowns being the biggest outlying variable, I'd say the safer pick is Josh Allen. If you're going to invest that high of a pick, borderline second round, right? I mean, at the end, 24, 25, 30 in that range, right? Personally, I don't want to take a quarterback there. There's just too much good stuff there, including Kyron Williams and looking at Jackson Smith and Najigba. I might look, if I'm looking for an edge, I might look for Trey McBride, but I'm not also interested in taking a tight end that early in this draft. So if you want to do it, it's okay. I don't think it's wrong to take Jackson over Allen, but the history says Allen is likely to be the better producer and the less deviation from where you get him if you take him as a first quarterback. And that's why I'm probably siding on the Josh Allen side.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, I'm going with Josh Allen too. And it's it's a lot of the reasons you just mentioned, right? Like Lamar Jackson was absolutely elite last year. There's no way around that. But the efficiency, it's going to be so hard for him to keep
Yeah.
up. And we've seen this type of efficient year from him in 2019, right? He had a 9% pass touchdown rate. And it was pretty obvious that had to go down the next year. And the 4 seasons after that, his rate was then 6.9, 4.2, 5.2, 5.3. That spiked back up to 8.6 last year. That's very, very likely in terms of everything that history tells us. It's going to come back down into the 5s or 6s, right? So that's going to hurt there. His interception rate was so incredibly low. His career rate is 1.9. Last year was at 0.8. So also that's likely to go up. His passing yards per attempt prior to last year, or just for his career, including last year, is at 7.8. Last year, he's at 8.8, a full yard per a passing attempt more than his career average. Like these are all things that are very likely to come down. He could still have a great year, but not that insanely efficient. And when you look at Josh Allen's year last year, there was nothing out of the ordinary. His pass touchdown rate was right. It was actually a little bit lower than some of his, other years. But it's pretty much right there in line with his career average. His yards per attempt, right there in line with his career average. His interception rate was lower last year than usual. But I do think in the new way he's doing things and spreading the ball around, that should be staying, somewhat lower than what we saw in previous years. So like Josh Allen, you can find, he's been so incredibly consistent and you can find reasons why he would even be better than last year. With Lamar Jackson, it's really hard to say he can even replicate last year again, let alone not falling off a bit. And it's just too good of players going around. So maybe you just avoid them both. You wait on Jalen Hurts, who you can get around later. The drop off there is a little bit less that you have to take him over, Hurts, you have to take him over Rashee Rice and Kenneth Walker and DJ Moore and guys like that. While Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, you're just taking him over really, really good guys. So is there anything else you wanted to add here for Lamar?
Well, I just think, again, the bottom could drop out with him and he could finish as the QB7 or QB8. It's very possible. There's a lot of guys stacked up right behind him that we know are very possible to produce and reach up to where Josh Allen is, including Hurts, as you mentioned, and Jaden Daniels, and going down the list. I look at Joe Burrow, who we talked about in the Bengals show, that he definitely could get it done as a pocket passer. He could be the next guy to spike to 40 to 50 touchdowns and really kind of pad that difference between those cheat code running quarterbacks. So again, Lamar Jackson, history shows, again, he's probably going to regress a little bit. Is he still going to produce and be an okay pick there? Yeah. Is he going to be a value pick? Absolutely not. You're not going to get a value. You're at best, you're going to get what you paid for. And I don't know if that's what you're really looking for, especially at quarterback and one quarterback leagues. 2 QB leagues, forget it, because we're going to jump on these guys early, right? But in a one quarterback league, yeah, I think you can play it a little bit differently here and get some value. I just don't like those two guys bunched in there, especially when there's so many good players at other positions that you could really stack up on and still get that same production. But I think if anyone's going to be at cost, it's Josh Allen, where Lamar Jackson much greater risk of falling well below where you're going to take him.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. Now we have to figure out if Derrick Henry is worth his cost as RB5. Monster season, his first year with the Ravens. Nearly 2,000 rushing yards. He put up 16 rushing touchdowns. His efficiency was off the charts. Can he do it again now that he's 31 years old? It has to fall off at some point, right? But I don't think he's going to fall off this year. We'll get to that right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get a panorama view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Vinny, let's discuss Derrick Henry. So right now, he's going as the running back 5 off the board behind Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Ashton Jeanty, who has recently surpassed him in consensus rankings. He's also going as the 13th overall player off the board. So right kind of, if you're in that 12-man league, right around the end of the first, early second round. He turned 31 years old in January, so he will be 31 for most of this season. However, I mean, that's getting pretty up there in age for running backs, but he was a monster last year, running back 4 in total points and points per game behind Barkley, Gibbs, and Bijan. And like I said earlier, he put up, over 1,900 yards, 1,921 to be exact, 16 rushing touchdowns, average 5.9 yards per carry. Can he do this again? Because it did feel like they almost were holding him back a bit. But then when you look at his final touch, he did have 325 carries on the season. But it felt like there was even more there that he could have had. But the Ravens were actually trying to, save him a bit last season.
Yeah, they got in a situation where Lamar was maybe taking away some points from Derrick Henry with his touchdowns there and his touchdown rate. Like there probably was maybe a half dozen more touchdowns on the table on those drives where they scored had Lamar not come through. So it was interesting that both of these guys produced at a high level together. And I think part of it is the threat of each other, right? I mean, people are deathly afraid of Lamar Jackson taking off and running. They're also very afraid of Derrick Henry taking a 3 or 4 yard gain, breaking a tackle, and going 60 yards and a touchdown, right? So these are the two most dynamic players at their position. Like we've seen cheat code quarterbacks, we've seen the power backs that are just going to maul people. This is the best of both worlds, bringing them together. And that's why we thought Derrick Henry could have a big season, and he did. And really the only question is health, because I look at this guy and look, there's been some seasons, even when he's been in his prime, where health has let us down, right? Where he hasn't been able to stay healthy and the numbers have declined there. But in a weird way, because he didn't start right away as the workhorse in Tennessee, it took him a little while. And then you got a few seasons where he missed some time. He maybe doesn't have the same mileage that we'd expect at 31, but I think he's also figured out how to be in much better shape. It's much like Tom Brady, where I think you saw Brady in better shape later in his career, where he put up some big numbers. And I think Derrick Henry's the same. I mean, just things, technology with diet and all that has really been huge for Derrick Henry. I think the way he approaches it, he's just been healthier. And the Ravens can also be easy on him, right, in practice, not give him much of a workload there. So he's rested, ready for game day. And again, some of these runs he's not touched, so it's really hard to wear down and break down when you're not touched and blowing through teams. And this offensive line can only get better. So, look, the only thing is age, but we've tried to knock him with age before, and I think maybe what we forgot is the Titans were going downhill, and that's what dragged him down versus himself, right? Now he ends up in the ideal offense with the ideal player. He gets a new contract. So I think he'll be motivated to play through that. I think the length of that it kind of tells you how many good seasons the Ravens expect. A couple more big ones here. So again, this guy is a freak. He has defied everything we've thought about. He's kind of like Adrian Peterson, except again a little bit more consistent, doesn't bounce around teams, and can have those big seasons. So I think all signs point to him just plug and play. He's one of the safer picks you can make. Again, anybody can get hurt here at this stage, and all these guys are not free, right? The guys that you might take ahead of him. So I would just say, hey, just take him at the value that you're going to get, even as 5. I mean, if they want to take Ashton Genty before, that's fine. I know exactly what I'm going to get from Derrick Henry. I don't know exactly what I'm going to get from Ashton Genty yet. I get the youth versus the age, but again, throw out all the things we know about running backs with Derrick Henry, because this guy is just, we've never seen a running back like this before.
I mean, yeah, he's been, outside of his 2023 season, his last season with the Titans, and the team was just a disaster. And he was the running back 16. I mean, outside of that, he's been so incredibly consistent. His ranks in average scoring since 2019. So again, he was running back 4 last year, running back 3 in 2022, running back 1 in 2021, running back 3 in 2020, running back 2 in 2019. Since 2019, only Christian McCaffrey has averaged more points per game than Derrick Henry. No, but that is my question, right? So they are going back to back right now in drafts, Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, both aging. We know Christian McCaffrey, when he's out there, he does have a higher ceiling than Derrick Henry, even though they both average, a lot of points and they can finish high. We know Christian McCaffrey's ceiling is just higher than Derrick Henry with the receiving ability. Absolutely. And they should both be on good offenses. With Henry's, you feel a little bit safer with the Ravens, but still, who would you want to take a shot on here, Henry or McCaffrey?
Yeah, with Henry, I don't think I'm taking a shot. I'm getting exactly what I think I'm going to get, right?
Sure.
With Chris McCaffrey is more the shot. Like I'm swinging for the fences a little bit more, hoping that he'll jump over Bijan, jump over Jahmyr Gibbs, jump over Barkley, and get back to where he was just a couple seasons ago, right? But we know that's a big if, because definitely the injury history of late says that Derrick Henry is the less of a durability risk, right? I mean, it was just pretty bad for Christian McCaffrey, the multiple things. And when we worry, it's usually when a guy comes back and he gets hurt again and goes on the shelf. And that, I think, is where we worry there. So I think if you're a bit risky and want to swing for the fences a little bit, I think you go McCaffrey. If you just want to go for a very high floor, you go for Derrick Henry. And I'm under the camp of like, I know what I'm going to get from Derrick Henry, plug and play. He's going to be out there. For me, I would probably go safe, because I think the ceiling difference between McCaffrey and Henry is not big enough where I want to go for McCaffrey.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can say, well, 16 rushing touchdowns is hard to replicate. And yeah, it is. But when you're Derrick Henry and his size and his ability near the goal line, and you're on an offense like the Ravens, where there's really no reason to expect, that they're not going to be a top 5 offense in the league this year again. So it's hard not to envision Derrick Henry having those chances. And really, it's like, you look at last year, he had 20 carries inside the 5-yard line, inside the opponent's 5-yard line, which tied for 3rd among running backs. But Josh Jacobs had 22, Chuba Hubbard had 21, and he was tied with Kyren Williams. Like, there's no reason to think that has to go down. It wasn't like this insane number that he was getting. Now, he did score 6 rushing touchdowns outside the 5-yard line. Maybe that goes down, but he's just so good. You expect those rushing touchdowns to be there. And like I said last year, I feel like he could have even scored more. So I won't be shocked at all if he replicates that. Like you said, he's safe. He's a safe pick. There's guys with higher ceilings that are going right around him. Like even Gibbs, like I think Henry's safer than Gibbs, but Gibbs has the higher ceiling. Genty has the higher ceiling. CMC has the higher ceiling. But if you want to just go with the safest of them all, it is Henry. We are going to finish up today's show and talking about the Ravens with figuring out who's going to be their top target. Because last year it was Zay Flowers, up and down season for him. Is he worth his wide receiver 23 cost? Or, do you wait on Rashad Bateman or DeAndre Hopkins, or, take Mark Andrews as tight end 6? These are all things we'll discuss right after we take a quick break. Before we finish up today's show, I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, let's figure out who will be the top target for the Ravens in 2025. We have Zay Flowers right now as the highest priced wide receiver on the team at wide receiver 23 in consensus rankings. He was the wide receiver 35 on average last year. So big jump up for a guy that was pretty inconsistent, doesn't score a lot. I will say I think that price is just too high, but we'll get into that. Rashad Bateman sitting at wide receiver 54 cost. He was wide receiver 50 on average last year. DeAndre Hopkins, first year with the Ravens, sitting at wide receiver 64. He was the wide receiver 57 on average last year with the Chiefs. And then Mark Andrews, tight end 6. That's the cheapest he's been in drafts for a long time. He was tight end 8 last year, a disappointing season for him. And then Isaiah Likely, who had that massive start of the year and kind of fell off, but tight end 21 last year. He's tight end 21 in rankings this year currently as well. So let's start with Zay Flowers. Do you think he's worth his wide receiver 23 cost? I don't at all. He was only a top 10 wide receiver 1 week last season with a lot of disappointing games mixed in between and only a few games that even helped you win.
Yeah, this is the biggest, weirdest fact from last year. Zay Flowers somehow was a Pro Bowler. I don't quite get that one. And look at the numbers. I mean, fantasy, I don't think you would think he was a Pro Bowler with the numbers. And we've seen what
or real life. I mean, 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns is not Pro Bowl material.
There must have been just a slew of injuries, and I think that's what happened. And they had to name enough people, and he got there.
And then they just forgot about Brian Thomas existing.
Yeah, I don't get it. Anyway, he is the number 1 receiver on this team, right? But what does that mean? Does it mean a lot? I don't know if it does because, again, he's not a big touchdown scorer. We've seen enough evidence, right? He's a smaller guy. That's not his shtick, right? He's not going to do that and suddenly blow up to like 10 to 12 touchdowns. It's not going to happen, right? He's a short area guy, quickness and ability to stretch the field if he's put in the right position. But here's my problem with investing in any of these wide receivers. There wasn't much lost here. 29 targets are vacated. Those are all from wide receiver, and those are all from one player, Nelson Aguilar. And now you add a DeAndre Hopkins to this mix, and he's just not a nobody, right? I mean, you would think just in our heads that Hopkins is a little bit more effective and is going to be trusted a little bit more than an Aguilar, right, for Lamar Jackson. So then you have these 29 vacated targets. Does Hopkins start to cut into those a little bit more where he's going to get more than 29 targets, right? We would assume. So that's going to steal from the others. And the efficiency is not going to necessarily be there with Lamar on the front end. So then you're getting to be a really close, like wide receiver by committee, right? That you're looking at. Like, I don't think he plays favorites. And I think that's actually something that makes the Ravens passing game so dangerous because they can spread around. They don't really have a true guy, but they do have different guys who can play roles at a certain point, right? Red zone or stretch the field. They can make the big plays happen at different points, and it's just a different guy. And they also have the versatility, right? With the looks, that's a big deal here where they can run out the 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers. They can also put just a regular dose of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely on the field. So that makes it hard to trust any of these wide receivers when very frequently only 2 are on the field, right? And they also have Derrick Henry and running the ball. So I don't know. Like, I don't think I want a part of Zay Flowers, but that if I go there, then I'm not going to suddenly say, oh, Rashad Bateman, we've seen him plenty too as a first round pick, right? We know exactly what his role is. The wild card here is Hopkins. How much do they say, okay, he came here to get a ring, let's feed him a little bit. You know, it didn't work out exactly the way he wanted in Kansas City, just fell a little bit short in the Super Bowl. So he obviously came to do that. Is Lamar going to say, here's another veteran I have that we're looking at that I had on the field, like a Derrick Henry, that I want to make sure he gets the ball and helps us win games. So I just don't see the 29 targets being a cap for Hopkins. I think he's going to pilfer some from the other guys. And it all comes back to, I think, Mr. Reliable, Mark Andrews, I think could have a nice rebound season at a very good cost at tight end 6.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Like, I'm not touching Zay Flowers. Absolutely no way. I mean, if you want one of these Ravens wide receivers, you might as well just wait for Bateman at wide receiver 54, 31 spots lower than Zay Flowers in terms of just wide receiver spots, right? So Bateman's barely getting drafted while Zay Flowers is going way too early. They both had very similar fantasy seasons. I mean, Bateman had as many 10+ point games as Flowers did last year. That was 7. And when you look at those games, it's not that different. I mean, honestly, Bateman had more 20+ point games than Flowers did. Flowers had that one massive game where he scored 2 of his 4 touchdowns on the season in week 9 with 27 points. Bateman had a 21-point game, a 20-point game. They each had, I mean, Bateman and him each had the 5 games with over 14 fantasy points. And again, they were pretty equal there. So if you're going for a guy on the Ravens because you know there's some upside there for them to have a big game, maybe in like best ball, I'm just waiting on Bateman over Zay Flowers for sure. Hopkins, I have no desire for. Couldn't do anything with Patrick Mahomes. I think he's past his years. 33 years old. He just turned last week. Like I'm not touching Hopkins this year, but I'm with you with Mark Andrews. I do think he's being, overlooked right now. He's 30, but there's still time. That's still plenty of time for tight ends to still be productive. And last year, like it started off so incredibly bad where, I mean, the first 5 weeks, he was averaging 3 fantasy points per game. It was non-existent. It was so terrible. But from week 6 through 18, he was averaging 12 fantasy points per game. I mean, right there at the top with all the other elite tight ends. And we've just seen too many years now of great production from him as a top 4 tight end, and every year from 2019 to 2023 and average scoring. So I'm fine with taking the shot on Mark Andrews, who's sitting there right now as the tight end 6 off the board. I do think maybe that's just a little too low for him. I personally would prefer Mark Andrews to TJ Hawkinson this year.
Yeah, and then you also look at the value. Is he a better value than Trey McBride, who we were talked about earlier, was going near Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in drafts in the back half of the second round? So, I mean, that's rather expensive for Trey McBride. And I just look, where are you going to get the value of tight end? I think this is a year to look for those for sure, because the prices of George Kittle and McBride have been driven up way high here. So we do have some alternatives. I think Laporta rebound season or Andrews rebound season. That's where you might want to look at where you can get that return on your investment. And that's what it's going to be in a lot of drafts. I think wait a little bit on quarterback, wait a little bit on tight end, and you're going to find some really good values. And Andrews, again, given how slow that start was, to get back to that level was pretty impressive to me. I mean, they just kind of maybe didn't use him as well in the early games. We had the likely buzz. Remember that? Oh, it was a time that passed the torch here from Andrews to likely. That didn't materialize at all down the stretch. And again, these wide receivers kind of are going to eat into each other's workload. And I think you made a really good point in looking at those big games for the wide receivers. There's going to be just so much inconsistency where you're not going to know when to play them, and they're going to have games where they have duds, and then they have these big games randomly, where I think Andrews can be the consistent guy throughout. And if Lamar is less efficient, that's going to make him go more to Andrews, right? I mean, it's not going to be as easy to get all those plays to the wide receiver, you would think, as it was last season. So, again, unfortunately, like I would like them to kind of clear up this fog at wide receiver, but I don't think they're going to mess. I don't think they're going to mess with what worked last year with this combination of changing up the looks for Lamar, because it really confused teams. And again, in the end, I think they're better off if they can have 2 tight ends on there and really get down on teams with Henry and Jackson.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with Trey McBride. It's a cost versus Mark Andrews cost, because right now you're choosing Mark Andrews around Brian Robinson Jr. is going around him, Tyrone Tracy, right? Those are guys you're choosing. With Trey McBride, you're choosing him over Bucky Irving or Josh Jacobs or Kyron Williams. Like, would you rather Bucky Irving and Mark Andrews or Trey McBride and Tyrone Tracy Jr.? I would much rather the Irving and Mark Andrews side.
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, so just keep that in mind. I mean, some of these guys are going to be inflated at tight end and quarterback, and there could be some fluctuation as well as we get closer to draft time in late August, early September. So just watch out for that. But it tends to be a little bit of inflation with those positions. But again, you're all looking for value. And again, the funny thing is, Jackson not a value, Andrews is a value, which we didn't think we were going to say at one point, but that's how it's played out here for the Ravens. Again, keep on keeping on with Derrick Henry. That's the one thing we can not emphasize the most here, that just don't expect him to drop off with the age. It's just not going to happen. And he's
Sooner or later it'll happen. Just not.
It'll happen. It might happen when he's like 36 years old or something. I don't know. But in this offense, no. Like if he was playing on a bad team and he was trying to like Emmitt Smith near the end and with the Cardinals or something like that, where he was still pretty productive for a couple years, then we're going to see it go down. But it's very rare that a running back will get rejuvenated by his second team, and we've really seen that. Well, with a lot of guys, Barkley, Jacobs, and Henry, and I think all those guys will continue, and Henry will be the best value of those.
Yep, I'm with you there. That will be it for today's show. We will be finishing up the AFC North teams with the Cleveland Browns on Wednesday, so don't miss that. We'll talk to you then. Bye, y'all.